Good afternoon and welcome into the Takeup. Today we have thread break number 2, Katie Wubben. Good afternoon, folks, and welcome into the Takeup. As you guys have been asking for over and over, you're saying what you want from me. One of the things is to have other wonderful embroiderers, digitizers, and educators on this show. And I happen to have for you a particularly wonderful person who I've gotten to teach around and with and seen teach, and who I've gotten to be at shows with very recently, and who goes by the name of Katie Wubben of Trouble Me Not Embroidery. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her in pretty quickly today. We're going to talk to you guys. You know, I like to say hi to everybody who comes in live, and certainly I'm going to do some of that too, but we're going to bring her in soon and just start into this wonderful conversation about the shows that have been going on up to this point, Expo and DAX, and shows that she's done, some things about the collaborations with vendors, and just kind of take the temperature of the embroidery scene with her incredible store of knowledge and experience that she's had out teaching and in her kind of bailiwick in the places where she teaches the most. So it's like we get to have this awesome perspective from Katie, and then I'll jump in. We'll discuss a lot of stuff, and you guys, I hope you'll share and jump in as well. But as I always do when I first start out, I am going to say hi to the folks who are here live. If you're on the replay squad, go ahead and fast forward and get straight to Katie talking, because that's really where it's at. But you know, I say hi to the folks who are live, so we'll stop and say hi real quick. First things first, we do have Frank from over in the UK says, and this is, I'm terrible to hear this. He was just at the Printwear and Promotion show over in the UK. He says, sorry, we'll catch the replay. Both my wife and myself came home from the show very poorly, so very sick. We are still ourselves, myself and Katie, we're still getting over coughs from that we picked up over in Expo, and being the true soldier that she is, she trooped on and did DAX as well. So you'll have to forgive us too. I'm sure there may be a little bit of coughing on either side, and definitely some reaching for the water in between while we're working on the show. But hope you get to feeling better here, Frank. Scott from Sunrise Tactical here is also in, saying happy Friday, everybody. Doug, who was at the shows, saying hi, everyone from Los Angeles. Susan coming in with a hey, everyone. We've got Barb from North Central Minnesota coming in, who's also saying hi to Katie already. We love that. And we've got everybody talking to each other. It's fantastic. So if you guys are here, by all means, share this episode with everybody. Get everybody in here live if you want to talk. And if not, hey, hang out, ask questions, talk with us, share your insights, and we will get into it, because we've got quite a lot to talk about. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and invite in our friend, my friend and yours, and who's going to be talking with us today, Katie. So Katie Wubben, thank you for being here.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm super glad you agreed to be on the show, especially with, like I said, we both had a heck of a time coming back from Impressions Expo with some nasties on board. So hopefully you're feeling a little better. I know I'm still struggling.
Yeah, it's been day by day, and just doing all the things, trying to sleep, trying to hydrate, trying to eat the good food, all the things.
That's the thing I got to quit doing. My wife feeds me when I get sick, and I don't need help. So for sure, we've been having that discussion around my household. But yeah, a lot more laying around than usual, and I need to get back at it. But in fact, we have another comment where he's like, "Oh, glad you're feeling better. Don't assume I'm feeling better just because I'm here." Right. Or me and Katie were gone through it, but I'm glad you're feeling better. Before we go too far into it, and just very briefly, you don't have to go through the entire crazy bio if you don't want to. For those of you who, or those among us who don't know who you are, who've been listening in, tell us just a little bit about how you got into the business.
Sure. So I started, well, first of all, I would say that I tend to be an overachiever. So having one business wasn't enough. I had to have, more than one. But I started my firstborn one when I was 18 years old, straight out of high school. Yeah. Made signs, decals, cut vinyl for all things. My first sign I ever made was my open house for graduation. So that's kind of fun. Awesome. A lot of people are like, oh, that's so brave. And I'm like, or stupid. It depends on how you define it, Right. But I think one of the only reasons I survived was because I eventually merged into the apparel industry, because I went to a sign expo, and the guy that I went to a class, he's, basically, what's the population of your town? And I said, well, like 2,200 people. He's like, you're never going to survive unless you can pull business from outside or add other things or whatever. He said a sign shop needs 10,000 people to serve, or you go under. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, well, that would explain why I'm eating so many mashed potatoes. So I never went
Yeah.
for ramen, I went for mashed potatoes. But, anyways, with that said, eventually down the line, I started with the heat transfer cut vinyl, heat
Hmm.
press, doing some transfers, added screen printing eventually. And then the last and most reluctant thing was embroidery. I was like, it's kind of embarrassing now because I'm like, I don't want to do embroidery. I want no part of it at all, ever. And of course, you don't screen print on beanies and fleece garments, certain things I was kind
Yeah.
of telling my customers, like, no, you don't want those. You want this. And then, eventually got into embroidery. And part of the reason I didn't want to do it was because I didn't realize how good it could actually look. I
Yeah.
see so
Yeah.
much poor quality embroidery that I was like, that's not my standard. So once I got into it, I realized that my embroidery machine is literally no more than a sewing machine that can be programmed to do anything I want. So my brain nuggets went, and I just fell in love with the whole process of embroidery, and it's evolving and changing over the years. So it's held my interest really tightly. So, of
That's
course, then
something
I
to be
started
said.
selling machines and training and,
Yeah.
hence the second born business.
Yeah, I started teenagers, very similar period of time. Yeah, I was a teen when I started, and hucking boxes in the back of a truck going into high school, and it pretty much was like, hey, you're interested in machines and you're not afraid of them. Here's
Mhm.
machines. Will you handle that? And I was like, well, yeah, okay. Go to be start as an operator and then jump into digitizing because literally there's a machine, a computer under a dust cover, and I wanted to touch any computer I could get around. So
Right,
I feel that kind of sideways slide in. And similarly, the great thing is, I think a lot of people don't know that you have print background. People
right.
don't assume that you have print background. I know I've just this last weekend I was talking to somebody who wanted a bunch of embroidery kind of help, who had just got into it from print, and they're like, I didn't know if you would talk to me or why you were following my account or whatever. Like we had been mutual followers. He's like, I don't know, you're following me. I'm a print person. I'm like, I have made a lot of positives, my man. Like
Right.
I might not be pulling squeegees, but I think a lot of us do multimedia and certainly
Yeah.
cut vinyl. I think a lot of embroiders do cut vinyl and
Well, I
heat
think
press
it goes
work.
back to that population thing. It's like if you have, especially in a small business situation, you
Yeah,
have a select number of customers, the more things you can say yes to, the more likely you are to survive the industry. Because there's so many that get in
absolutely.
and, they don't have enough to offer and then they go out of business after a couple years of struggle.
Well, and you kind of talked about pulling in more people from your local area, like outside of your local area, but it's also if you're going to fully serve a local area and there isn't a lot of other options around, you take that stuff on and they get some trust in you. It's much more likely that
Right.
you can serve all of those needs in that small community. I think
Yep.
it's people don't really take that into account. And I think that's the great thing about having you on is that you have worked in a smaller community in more of a rural area, but you've traveled and you've taught and you've been around and been with all these people. You've seen both sides of that, and I think a
Mhm.
lot of people in the commercial space, especially, don't think about rural decorators,
Mhm.
or at least they don't take it into consideration as part of the very real market that's out there.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's hard because there's crossovers obviously where
Sure.
any business like
Oh, and
embroidery,
it's a business. Yeah.
every single one needs to know how to hoop properly, what backings to use. But then getting into, and I think one of the things that really, really excited me about the on-site trainings that I've done is realizing like how much guidance besides embroidery these businesses are looking for because they don't have
Yeah.
necessarily these are your mom and pop people that just wanted to get out of the daily grind of 9 to 5 job and
Yeah.
having somebody tell them they're going to work 60 hours. They choose to work 60 hours a week now instead of being told they're gonna. But
Yep.
if you enjoy what you're doing, but you need those tools and ideas, and not everybody has that business minded side, especially in this industry. We're creatively driven. So to pair that with business, it can be a challenge. Whereas in the bigger
Yeah.
businesses, you have your departments that handle, okay, you've got your creative part
Yeah.
here and then your business person over here, and they're two separate people staying in their lane. But
Absolutely. I mean, I came from that kind of shop. Now, certainly, I'll say the weirdness that I bring to this thing is I did e-commerce from almost, not day one, but very early on. As soon as it was a thing, I started doing e-commerce work. I had to do, because nobody understood the electronic commerce side of it, dealing with websites and orders. I ended up doing all of the roles like I was a little entrepreneur inside of
Right.
a very traditional mid-size decorator where I was in the art department essentially. I mean, I
Hmm.
was an operator and I still went back and forth, but you get parked in the art department as a digitizer, which is a very different kind of world. But you're
Right.
right, as once you have to take it all on yourself, I think, and you very uniquely started out immediately with that. I think that's a great thing that you're bringing. In fact, I'll kind of move us into Expo a little bit. At Impressions Expo, you taught pricing and profitability as well as embroidery essentials. I mean, you're teaching pricing and profitability and business acumen right next to where you're about to do a hands-on workshop with embroidery, and I think that's an awesome mix.
Yeah, that class was a new one. I've pitched it a number of times to different groups, and
Yeah.
nobody takes me up on it because they want my embroidery side, and I'm like, okay, all right, you know. But it is the number one thing people ask me besides embroidery skill
Mm-hmm.
set when I'm doing on-site trainings is how do I
Yeah.
price my stuff? And pricing is so important. So it is, you really, and it's not a one size fits all thing. So
Yeah.
that's where, that class I was kind of nervous about because I'm like, is this my arena? Should I be in this lane? But it's my understanding people are loving it and really getting a lot out of it.
Awesome.
So that's really awesome that that's turned out how I wanted it to,
Well,
as
I'm
far as
I'm glad to see you teaching it for real.
Mhm.
I mean, certainly I've taught some pricing classes, but you're right. You're always, every time I pitch like 6 classes, you're lucky if they take a business class. You're
Right.
lucky if they take one on management. You're lucky if they take one on, process of job,
Hmm.
job
The
information, any of that stuff that
boring
we deal
stuff.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they want. I hate, this is me just being. I'll just be bad and say it. A lot of people really want projects. They
Right.
want projects. They want fun projects. They want, beginning to end. How do I decorate in this style?
Right.
Which is cool. But if
Yeah.
you can't get anybody to pay for that, it's not always the
Exactly.
coolest thing.
Exactly.
That's
Yep.
always my argument with the commercial side of it, at the very least.
Right. Yeah.
So as you were at Expo, did you find that individually that the people were receiving that very well? They were taking it on board.
One of the biggest compliments I could say I have is when I survey the room in the beginning and
Hmm.
kind of take note of who's in there, big business, little business, who are you
Yeah, yeah.
taking my class. One of the more intimidating ones in that class was somebody that's a very large business. They have
Mm,
a background in accounting and
wow.
obviously understand pricing and numbers very well. And it's like, well, good luck to you, sir. I hope I teach you something. And when that person comes up to you after the class and says, I never thought about XYZ, this was a really good takeaway for me. To me, that tells
That's
me that
awesome.
there was content there that no matter the size or scale of the business, the background of the person taking it, if I can offer them some nuggets that, one of the things I think we talked about, on the profitability side is turning your downtime into profit by creating something, whether it be samples to send out for your customers or learning a new technique, doing
Yeah,
some freestanding lace that's a door prize thing. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can do on your downtime for your machine. Obviously, each business is going to be different. But I've got a retail space, so one of my downtime fillers has been very, very awesome is flour sack dish towels. I get
yeah,
the really cool designs from Urban Threads and Embroidery Library, sew them out. They take 10 to 15 minutes per towel to sew. I don't care what colors I do. I just randomly pick colors and make them and
yep,
then put them on the floor for sale for 10 bucks a piece. Now, did I make my per hour shop rate on them? Not necessarily. However,
hmm,
my machine was sitting there idle. Do I need to make my shop rate per hour? No. And I
yeah,
don't have an
yeah.
extra person standing there running them. It's not like a hat that I have to dedicate somebody to.
Oh yeah.
Quite literally walk over, hoop another one, throw it on, walk away, go do bookwork, clean the store, make phone calls, whatever.
I think that's the funny thing is people are either too quick to want to give things away or too rigid about pricing, and they
Mhm.
don't think about the reality of it. Whereas I think those of us who started kind of feet on the ground in a business, or at the very least in some sort of production, a lot of us are like, no, the reality is the reality. And that means when the needles aren't moving, the amount of money we're making is zero. Like that's just how it is. And also I love the idea of it being flour sack dish towels. Is there a more forgiving thing to embroider on than a
I
flour
don't do
sack
backing on
towel?
them. I just hoop it really well. It's like my
Love it.
pro hooper test when I'm on site with people. I'm like, okay, now that I've taught you how to hoop, let's do a dish towel. And if we can
Heck
do a
yeah.
dish towel and not have false thread breaks or thread breaks, you're an
That's
expert
awesome.
hooper. Let's move on.
I love that. Also, I love the fact that you fully kind of admit, and I mean, this is me as an in-house digitizer who did almost everything custom. I did not use a lot of stock at all, but I had to learn down the road how many people got perfectly good use out of stock. And you're using stock designs as someone who can digitize.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's
Yep.
awesome for people to know
Well,
because I
yeah,
know
if I
people.
can buy them, I get them on
Yeah,
sale,
yeah,
because I'm frugal. So very rarely will I pay full price, but their designs always sew out perfectly. I've learned
yeah,
how to be a
yeah.
better digitizer by watching them sew out, pick up some little neat techniques like
Awesome.
split lines and all that kind of fun stuff to give it a more creative flair.
Yeah.
Because even though I'm very creative, I don't always look at these things with that creative. Like I'm still learning how to stroke that creative digitizing. It doesn't have to be just your basic complex fill. It can be a decorative
Mm,
fill or
mm.
whatever. So that's been fun.
That is very cool. I like I said, I just like that we can get to this point where you go, hey, not everything is going to be in the same package exactly at the rate or
Mhm.
whatever. And different kinds of mixes work for different people. If you have
Yep.
a retail space, you can do things differently than you might if you don't. And certainly, like, I never used stock. Why? Because everything we did was business to business,
Right.
almost all. Now,
Yep.
almost. Obviously, we did other creative junk, and I did decor and stuff. And I'm sure you've done the same thing where you've done a home
Mhm.
decor before.
Oh
It's not
yes.
every day for most of our shops,
Right.
but at the same small shops, you're going to take in a lot of weird stuff.
Right.
But the fact that you have that these different perspectives still can result in operating businesses that are doing well is fantastic. And we got a couple comments. We'll bring in some fun comments in between all the stuff we're talking about. My patriot over here with Brilliance, Lisa Shaw says, "Hi, Katie and Eric. Excited for the first thread break, only of the year." Now, admittedly, I said I would do more of these and did like one last year. So that's on me. We got Ramona is in, who's also there and teaching and says she loves this thread break. She's listening in the background. Uh, B's in from Australia. Hey, B, glad to see you here as well. Becky's in saying happy Friday. Christine says, my comments aren't going as fast as my mouth, apparently. Uh, great to see Katie and Eric together, two of my favorite people. Uh,
Aw.
you're one of our favorites too, Christine.
Yes.
Glad to see you. And then we have everybody talking to each other, which I love. But here's a couple of good comments too. We got Barb from Minnesota Custom Made saying, "Word of mouth is my best advertising in my business, and I live in the sticks next to a small town. There are opportunities and persistence, knowing your niche." Yeah,
Hmm.
and I'll
Definitely.
say Albuquerque, not a huge town, but not a small town by any means. And still, I would argue word of mouth is, if it's not the top driver all the time, it's the best driver.
Yeah, I would agree. 100%.
Social proof beats all. If someone trusts the human that they are listening to and that person says this is good, they will believe it is good way more
Hmm.
than any advertising you can do in a broadcast means. It's just the truth.
Yep.
Um, we have a couple good points here. Also, Christine, very much agreeing with you, Katie, saying, "Good point. Creativity is amazing and business mind is a great thing, but the two aren't always in the same body. This happens." So sometimes business has to be explained for the creative brain. We see that a lot in embroidery. I'm sure you have too out there teaching.
Yep. I like that. One of my favorite things, like someday I'm going to do this. We'll see when it happens, but I want a bucket hat that has my different labels all the way around so I can just turn the hat.
Just
Like right now I'm the electrician. Right now I'm the plumber. Right now I am the marketing person.
that is a very good idea. I would have to agree. Anytime you're working in any kind of small, even small to medium business, you're always going to have like tons of
Yeah.
hats. And solopreneurs, it's every hat ever. Yeah,
Yeah.
what we always say is like you're the plumber. You're the
Yes.
plumber, you're the janitorial staff, and you are the
Yep.
CEO every day at the same time.
What's really fun is if you ever get in on a conversation, my brother and I own the building that my business is in.
Mm.
So I am the landlord, but I am also the tenant. And so when it's time to discuss, like, should we replace the floor? The tenant is complaining, I'm like, okay, landlord hat. This is what I think. Okay, tenant hat. This is what I think.
You're like, according to me, that has more wear left in it. Now that my hat's on backwards, it's still good. I don't want to pay for it.
Right?
Yeah, no, this is very true. I mean, that's the one that always got me, is I had to be the digitizer and then I had to be doing sales, and I'm like, as a digitizer, I need to redo all this, and this isn't good enough to do, and this all needs to change. As the person who needs the needs to get this out the door. It's fine.
Right. Yeah.
And you're
You
like,
argue with
okay,
yourself and get kind of, yeah.
yep. And it's like, nope, it doesn't need to be done, and it's fine. And the few stitches that are out of place are great, I guess, as the salesperson, but as the
Right.
digitizer, I didn't agree with that one. But we all have a couple more comments, and we'll get back to it. But Christine also says, I think we need more classes about the business sides of things. There are specific there are aspects of a decoration business that need to be discussed and taught. Absolutely. It's a different thing, and our pricing structures are very different than other. In fact, I'll say this, using business software that is for other businesses doesn't always work out because our pricing structure is so different and our
Right.
inventory is so different. Sized colored inventory is such a
Yeah.
pain
It is.
in a lot of software. So yeah, that's why I always kind of get harp on people using stuff specific to the industry because it's true.
Mhm.
And then Cindy says, just in general, I met Katie at my first Applique Getaway enjoying the show. So another
Aw.
fan. We love Sydney's. Well, and
Yes.
then look at who you're bringing in today from the main Impressions account. You have to wave and say, I guess you guys are showing up today. Why weren't you here earlier? I was in the show. we love having both of you sharing your expertise and impressions. Now, thank you very much, guys, and we love being there. So,
Yeah. That's an awesome
the
space
show
to
is
be in.
fantastic. Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
great place to teach. Okay, so in general, then, since we're kind of on Expo, we'll kind of tie up Expo in a bow here. Um, in general, how did you think at Expo kind of the makeup of your classes was? A lot of beginners, a lot of advanced folks, more commercial folks, more prosumers. How did you feel that mixture was for you?
I feel like it was kind of an average mix.
Okay.
I kind of wasn't sure what to expect with it being my first year teaching there. So I
Hmm.
kind of, kind of was like, I don't know if this is my crowd of people because, are they going to be different than my average group? But it turns
Yeah,
out
yeah.
I think there was a mix of everything that I'm used to, the smaller businesses, the bigger businesses. Like I said, it was, a little intimidating walking in and finding out I've got some, highly trained accountants and things like that taking my pricing and profitability, but they were kind of learning this industry because they
Awesome.
don't normally work in this industry. So that
Yeah,
helps them better serve their clientele. So, it was exciting to have, a variety, I would say.
that's
So,
great.
hmm
I had something similar or several similar kind of experiences. What I think the new thing for me was, and I don't know if you had this, people who were kind of had a embroidery department dropped on them. There was
yes.
more of those this year.
Yep.
And certainly not there aren't every year. There's always somebody every year who's like suddenly
Right.
shoved into a position where they have to learn. And that's what I see a lot of, but more than usual. And often it was like the entire staff who ran a department was gone. And suddenly here are two or three people who are like, we are brand new. We were hired on to run a department and we have nothing.
I think a lot of that comes down to how hard it's been to get staff. I
Yeah.
mean, things changed during COVID, and I don't know. I mean, some of it was good, some of it was bad. One of the bad parts is it's been hard to. I mean, our inventory is stabilized to where we can get things again, but
Yeah.
staff is hard, and embroidery is not necessarily something you can throw anybody into. You have to be detail oriented. You have to kind of have somewhat of a mechanical troubleshooting brain,
Yeah.
unless you're doing the same exact thing over and over, which how often does that happen? So I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of that where people are taking on different departments and more spaces in the businesses that do offer multiple things, and they're finding that they
Yeah.
just have to figure it out.
Oh, yeah, and definitely some of the old guard of embroidery retiring or aging
Mhm.
out,
Yep.
um, or disappearing or selling off.
Right.
More of that this year than usual. But I feel the same way as you. I had a good mix. I was glad to see more beginners because I've had years where it was just like, frankly, kind of a lot of beleaguered intermediate to experts who are just trying to learn something, but mostly just going through the motions. I've had that some years for
Yeah.
sure. But that's happened to me, not often, but I've had that. It was good to see some new blood as well. But it was funny how many of them were like panicked new
Right.
blood who
Yeah.
really needed some help right now. We're very excited to get it. That's why I was so
Right.
glad to see you teaching both courses that you had because it's like, boy, they needed those.
The favorite thing I can say about the embroidery essentials class that I've been doing for the
Mm-hmm.
Impressions show, I've got it coming up at the Atlantic City one as well,
Mm-hmm.
is how many people come to that class before they've bought a machine or right
Yeah.
after buying a machine. And I'm like, you guys are amazing because You're coming when you need to, before you've done all the bad things, before you've created bad habits. Because believe it or
Absolutely.
not, I mean, I'm sure you've run into this too. It's easier to teach somebody with zero habits than it is to break old ones and say, okay,
True.
and then you've got the person that's like, well, I'm having a really bad time. And you give them some things to try. And then they're like, well, that's not how I do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how is that working? So it is really awesome to see those people investing that time, hit the ground running with at least a foundational understanding of the things that can go wrong and how to avoid them, instead of like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and then come a year later struggling and all the
Oh
profits
yeah.
you lost in that year because you couldn't take on the work. It's wonderful that people in the beginning stages are coming out for that class.
I also love when they do it before the machine, because I
Yes.
cannot tell you how many times it's like, I've got a 30-year-old almost dead machine that I bought and I can't make it do anything. And I'm pretty sure it's it's a skill that
Right.
I'm missing. And I'm like, yeah, it might not
Mhm.
be, my
Right,
friends. Like
right.
you may have a lemon right now, and I'm sorry to tell you that.
You
Or
may have bought a very expensive paperweight.
yeah, yeah, you very much may have something for scrap value that you're about to have hauled off here in a
Right.
minute.
Well,
But
and I hate to
it
say it
just
because
happens that way.
as a salesperson too, like I always tell
Yeah,
people, you entering the business, you don't know what you don't know. So a
yeah,
salesperson
yeah.
can sell you something that sounds like an absolute necessary feature that
Hmm.
you may or may not ever use, like depending on the business, depending on what you're doing and the volume you're planning to do. And then I think too, just being open minded about, like, I didn't know where my business was going to go. I said, I don't want to do ugly grandma crap. And it turns out that my niche is cute grandma crap. So I do a lot of custom work that's one piece here and there, but I make a lot of money
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
that. And I found that that's where I like doing that. I can do the
yeah,
100-piece orders, left chest logos. I can do those. I don't enjoy it. If I have staff that runs them, fine.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's
It's a
perfectly
lot
fine.
easier.
I don't enjoy it.
I will admit, every time I go, oh, I'm a real logo guy, but I had in a production department. I'm not saying I didn't do plenty of production myself, but I didn't do all the production. And when I
Right.
was doing all the production, you're right, it's not as enjoyable. But yeah, obviously I was like the logo guy. And here's the thing, I remember people starting out where you'd say you do embroidery and they would say exactly that, like what you make doilies or something. And I'm like, no, I've never touched that. And then later on, when I did make one, I felt weird. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, maybe I put a teddy bear on something, or maybe because I actually, for a while there, I was actually servicing a custom teddy bear company back before Cubbies and all the stuff where there's stuff that people could embroider at all. It was a person who was manufacturing all of them, and I serviced all of their custom designs for that stuff. And so there came this point where I'm this serious, I'm a serious commercial digitizer, and I was doing tons of little teddy bear stuff,
I
um,
love
just
it.
for a little while. But it was like, and I realized pretty early, I'm like, this is the same. Technically, it's the same. I mean, all the technique and working on teddy bears is super difficult. They're furry. They don't
Right.
act the same way, and especially because the areas you have to work in are worse. Now, I was doing panel program, unlike the stuff like you had to do. You did cubbies a lot. I know that's what people know you having shown a lot of cubbies, which if you don't know cubbies, they zip open and they have stuffing that comes out so you can actually access any part of the bear with an
Super
embroidery machine.
disturbing too, as they
Oh
sit there
yeah.
vibrating on the machine. Their little arms are flapping around.
Yes, the unstuffed cubby with little arms flapping is a sight you should see once, but you probably don't
Right.
want to see when you close your eyes. Um, but yeah, I mean, you did a lot of that, but I don't think that's the thing is I think people who look at that and go, "Oh, that's grandma embroidery." I'm like, okay, try some for
Yeah.
sure. Get some faux fur and try it, and tell me how great what you know about a polo shirt transmits to faux fur, and we'll discuss it after the fact. How hard grandma embroidery is. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I think it's a false narrative that craft is easier or that commercial is more serious. Frankly, small left chest designs that are under 6,000 stitches are the easiest thing on earth, especially when they're on
Depending on
really
the fabric
smooth
they're going
materials.
on, I would argue.
Depends
But
on the yeah. If we're talking about like horrible textured fabrics or very stretchy, very thin fabrics, yeah. But you're doing uniform shirts all day. That is a beautiful time to be alive. To
right.
do like poplin uniform shirts
Yeah,
all day is fantastic
exactly.
comparatively. But yeah, we have a couple more comments I want to bring in that are great. First, just say hi to Joe. Joe Kramer's here. We got to see at the show, and but he wanted to change and make sure everybody got him on his Applique Joe account. I get it now. Much better. He a lot of awesome applique, and I love Lisa saying what we hear every time we teach, which is, "What? You don't just push a button to do professional embroidery?"
Yeah.
It turns out AI has not eliminated us just yet.
Nope.
No, Katie will still be teaching people, and I will still be grinding on the back end, making everybody fonts that work for some time, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I love that. And certainly Lisa definitely agrees and says, that's awesome. It's easier to teach fresh instead of having to fix bad habits. But from a teacher POV, love it. Fully, she's done the thing that I have sometimes been scared to do, the retreats, which I have not done a retreat. I've been asked before to teach at a retreat. So she'll do those intensive 3-day digitizing classes with the same people, just grinding through some of their problems. I know that you probably, Lisa, have done the the dance of saying, well, I know it worked once, but here's why it might not be the best option. Certainly relearning is tough, but yeah. And Carol says, speaking of stuff, she's like, there's no shame in embroidering stuffies. They are loved more than a front chest logo. This is what I always say, heirlooms. You have a kid who is going to keep that thing for 40 years. Like that's, that is not something to sneeze at. We should understand what we're doing in the world here. And
Right.
so treat that stuffy with some
Yeah.
care. Then on top of it, there's massive, we got to talk about business. Like you said about doing boutique work, boutique, small, highly customized work has a high margin.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are high margins to be made.
The amount of money some of my customers have paid me for, I was just giving the example at the last class I taught about this sweatshirt. Somebody reached out and said, hey, I've got all these designs. I have all different characters. You put the grandkids' names on them. So there's an
Yep.
elf theme one. Well, the elves are all like 10, I would say 7 to 10,000 stitches per elf. They're really not that small or quick to stitch. So my normal elf limit is like 3 to 5. And they're like, can we get like, I don't know, 14 or 17 or something absolutely ridiculous. I don't even remember how many, but they were down
Wow.
sleeve, each sleeve across the front. I had to hoop it like 5 times, I think, to get them all on there. It was a
Wow.
white sweatshirt. So nonetheless, like oil or dirt or any, like if I drop this thing in my shop floor, this is not good. We're going to be redoing this shirt. So
Yeah.
I charged them very, very, very dearly for it. They paid it happily, wanted to tip me.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it was for a great grandma. What do you get great grandma? She has everything possibly to exist. And then when they messaged me after they got it and they said it brought tears to her eyes, she said it was the
Oh.
best gift she'd ever received in her life. I'm like, I had the honor of making that come to life.
Yeah.
Like, how amazing is that? That is so cool.
I mean, if you ever stop and think, I know certainly looking at the stuff you've made over the years, I think how many people have you made that heirloom for?
Mhm. Yeah.
It's a tremendous number. And I thought, oh, I do commercial stuff. Maybe it's not like that. And then I realized how many like veterans motorcycle rides that I did for memorials.
Yep.
Tons. How many times have and even I thought about it. I still have stuff from my jobs in high school before I did this. You do sometimes keep the stupid job hat. You do sometimes keep the resort wear from the random town you spun through and you have a memory about it. So
Right.
all the work we do has a very, especially how durable embroidery is, it
Right.
has a chance of being something really important to people's lives. In fact, I love this. Gina comments, a chain stitch sailor cap from the state fair when I was 5 lit my embroidery fire.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome. Come on, you gotta love that.
So
I
cool.
love chain stitch stuff too, but
Yeah.
you can't. I keep being threatened to have someone send me one of the old Singer, crank chain stitch machines. I'm like, I'm, I'm not going to do it. I know I'm not going to do it. If I can't afford myself a egg chenilling machine, the chain stitch is not happening. It'll be faux chain stitch at best, folks. I don't know. Lots of folks have said, we got a Cornely over here. I'm like, nope. I don't think I could do it.
Nope.
All right. So we talked a lot about Expo, but you just came off of DAX, so the Kansas
Yep.
DAX. If you want to share, I would like to know kind of how DAX was and some experience that you had from DAX that stuck out to you.
Sure. Well, first of all, it was the coldest DAX I've probably ever been to in Kansas City. I think it was 2 years ago. We had some ice and sleet type of stuff, but it was cold. It was basically as cold as where I'm at, which is northern Iowa. So I was like, okay, well, never mind the 30-degree, weather. We're going to be in 10-degree weather. But despite that, there was, a number of people came out for it, which was awesome. they had snow on the ground, which I don't think I've ever experienced more than a dusting there. So that was
Yeah, yeah.
but my favorite part of the show was just seeing the familiar faces, seeing new faces there, especially in the classes, finding those people that are coming out to learn that are just entering the industry. So that was really cool.
Mhm.
And I love the energy at the show, at all the DAX shows. It just gives you such a personal touch to the industry.
Mhm.
The bigger shows are awesome because there's so much to see and take in, but the smaller ones allow those networking opportunities, not just and the actual conversations with vendors besides just the quick sales pitch. I feel like
Mhm.
it gives a whole different level of, I had people bringing stuff they've made into my booth and being able to show me what they've been making, which is really cool. You don't see that necessarily happening at the bigger shows.
No, I mean, as much as I always tell people, if you have to choose, if this is for you the most expense and you have to do it, I understand wanting to choose the biggest show. I
Hmm.
fully do. But the thing is, most of the regional shows are easier to get to and cheaper to stay at, or
Oh
and
yeah.
even for the teachers cheaper to undertake. So the regional shows do have a lot to offer still. I don't ever want, because I do tell people Expo is this big huge thing, but at the same time, the regional shows of all kinds are going to be easier to get to, and the personal experiences. You're right. There's just more time to spend with people.
Yeah.
So there is something to that that shouldn't be just thrown out. I think that's some people are like, nope, I went to the big show. Why I'm going to see the same brands at the small show, but you're certainly going to get more time
Yeah.
from kind of from everybody, from the educators and from the vendors.
Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. And the other thing I would say, it was fun to see some of the vendors that I haven't seen at the DAX
Mhm.
shows for a while.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
seeing a little bit of the return of the apparel vendors,
Okay.
which is really nice because I think, especially being in the Midwest, if you don't have the ability to escape to the bigger shows, it
Yeah.
is your opportunity to get hands on with those new garments, which is huge as an embroiderer because you want to know what kind of quality how do they feel, and you don't want to spend $1,000 ordering samples in, and a lot of the companies aren't doing open houses anymore. So
Yeah.
I really was excited to see some of those apparel vendors back on the floor.
Well, I think people don't also kind of understand it from the larger commercial side. I know that we with the amount of money we were spending per year, we got more free vigs. We had the people coming out to us from the vendors with their sample cases presenting to us at our shop. That is not happening for the third bedroom prosumer or small business people. They're not necessarily, yes, sometimes you get a good sales rep who comes by your shop, but you're probably not getting tons of sample credit or anything like that that you might get from a bigger shop. I think sometimes the larger shops don't take into account that if you're a regional or a smaller shop, this may be your chance to get your hands on stuff
Right.
without having a lot of expense. And it's
Yes.
worthwhile to remember that.
Yeah, well, especially, I mean, I love being out, in the sticks,
Mhm.
as somebody else put on their comment,
Yeah.
but the thing is, like, you're right. Even though I'm straight off at 35, 6 miles, you know,
Hmm.
I'm close to a lot of, but no salesperson is going to be able to justify getting to me to do that presentation when
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
next business is 30 miles away. And that may not be their customer. So I think, yeah, you're right. The opportunity is, that was one of my favorite things when I started attending the DAX show in Minnesota was
Hmm.
getting hands on, seeing the new products, being able to touch and feel everything, and then, get those catalogs and stuff, obviously, but like mostly just getting hands on, like grab the garments, look at how you would actually hoop this, look at the design area. Does it have
Yeah.
an embroidery pocket? And if so, how big is it?
Yeah.
Because I don't care if it's there if you can't get the hoop in there that you actually want to be using. So,
The number of embroidery pockets, the number of access pockets that I have still sewn shut because it just won't do it
right.
is
Uh-huh.
not zero. I'll say
No,
that much. As
right.
much as I love the attempt to put
Yeah,
those in, they don't always hold up.
right. Yep. So I think that's, just a really, really awesome thing to see. I know like Gildan, Los Angeles Apparel,
Mm,
Dignity Apparel. There was, a
okay.
number of them there, and it was really cool. So I'm really, really glad that they came out. And, I think too, being able to see some of the trends with the apparel, the colors that are popular, things like that, is it's always nice to get, I mean, digital representation of colors is one thing, and it's
Yeah.
pretty good, but nothing like being in person, I feel like.
Oh,
So
100%. I mean, that's, you can't really judge anything. We are, as much as we are digital, we are so mired in what thread is, what fabric is, how it
mhm.
works physically. Getting your hands on something can't be excused, especially in embroidery. I mean, don't get me wrong, and I'm not, and you've been in screen print. I've done some screen print, and I've done tons of other kinds of prints. Yes, printing, you do need to know your material and how fuzzy it is and everything else and how stretchy it is makes a difference. But embroidery interacts with fabric on an entirely different level. You absolutely need to be aware of how weave and knit and what kinds of structures are there and how well it stretches and thickness,
Yeah.
how that affects stuff in a way that I don't know that almost any of the other processes have to do as much with it as we do. It's
No, I
super
agree.
physical.
Yep. In fact,
So,
I would say, like, even if you can grab a catalog when you're
mhm.
with these things, especially if you go to a big show, there's
Yeah,
so much to take in. It's hard to remember everything. So I would even go as far as grab a catalog, take a highlighter or a Sharpie marker, and when you get hands on with them, star for, stretchiness. Grab them
yeah,
and stretch them and see how stretchy they are. That way, when you go back to your store, you kind of know, okay, maybe I want to get samples of, a
yeah.
variety from this vendor to work with and get comfortable before I offer them for sale. Because, then confidently you can decorate these things and make them look really good.
Absolutely, and I think honestly, it's hard to argue that you shouldn't. But what I love about that concept is you don't want to just throw a catalog in front of people, even if you can order everything.
Right.
Um, that they get analysis paralysis because they don't know what to do with a full catalog of garments in the first place. And secondly, they will likely pick something you don't like to decorate. The number of times people come to me with, I hate these hats. This hat is causing so much trouble. And I'm like, have you ever tried to pitch a similar looking hat that doesn't run
Right.
poorly? And it's never in the, like, well, they asked for this one. I'm like, okay.
Show
I
them what
mean,
you want them to ask for.
and here's the crazy thing. I would tell somebody too, even if it's not for them. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes people are brand loyal and you can't shake them, and that's fine.
Right.
I have taken two garments that are the same price to me, but one is way easier to run and discounted the one that's easier to run because I know that my machine time goes up if that other garment is
Right.
harder to run. You That discount is not me being generous. That's literally just avoiding the trouble and trying to get somebody into the pocket where I can keep that needle moving.
Well, and understanding that difference between your machine is
Yeah.
producing something versus it is not. And I think, at
Yep.
the surface, it's easy to look at. I mean, it's kind of like the gas being on sale 20 miles away. So you drive 20 miles for the few cents off per gallon, and you spent more to drive there than what you saved. Like, it's kind of the same thing, but sometimes it's hard to step back and realize some of those spots.
Yeah, no, I think it's true. And sudden cost. That's the other thing too. We start working on something or we put a lot of effort into something, and then we're like, man, I'm just going to see this thing through. When truthfully, sometimes cutting it loose or doing a different route altogether is really the best way.
Right. Yeah.
So speaking of, kind of talked about vendors in relation to both Expo and DAX to a degree. One of the things I really loved that you did, and I just would love, first I'm just going to throw some praise at you, and then I would like to talk about it in general. You did these cool vendor collaborations at Expo where you had garments with different vendors that were decorated, and it was so cool because it was really easy for people to envision how they would decorate stuff. So, kind of, how'd that come around, and what do you think about that concept of collaborating with vendors and decorating?
Yeah. So I would say it was really cool how well it worked. Actually, it being a new concept, wasn't really sure how it was going to be received. Um, Two different vendors I did that with, and I think it gave the salespeople, obviously, for garments, they know their
Yeah,
garments. They
yeah,
don't necessarily know how to decorate those garments. They might understand some bullet points, but truly understanding the fabric response and how to make those
mhm,
recommendations. If your clientele is scared to touch them, how do you sell them that garment? So,
yeah,
one of the things that came about when I walked the floor at the Fort Worth Impressions show, I talked with a gal that worked for Supasoft, and she saw speaker on my name tag, and she's like, well, what are you teaching? And so I told her embroidery basics and, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, I have a question for you. And I said, okay. She said, can these be embroidered? And she took me to their really, really cool towels. And I was like, absolutely, yes. And
Yeah,
it
those
was
are cool.
perfect because I want everything to look the best it can. And so I'm like, I don't want to do this with your traditional approach because it's going to leave the backside
Hmm.
visible. And
Hmm.
if it's a towel and it's super nice and then you have the embroidery back, like it's a little rough. I don't care what, it just looks
Sure, sure.
somewhat unfinished. And so I said, if you give me a sample, I'll take it back and I'll decorate it and send you some photos. And she was very excited. And I said, send me more. I'll decorate them for you to put out at the show. And I think it just helped people understand that, one, there's different approaches to things. Two,
Yeah.
don't be scared of those textures because one of them is a waffle texture. Another one is a lighter, fabric. And so
Hmm.
it is like being able to guide their customers towards what backings and how to approach them is really critical for their customer success. Because if they, like you
Huge.
said, you go and you grab a hat, you sew on it, it was a train wreck. I don't want to touch it again.
Yep.
How many of
Yep.
those hats are you going to sell? So it was really cool and exciting to be able to do that. I was very honored to be able to provide those samples for Cotton Heritage and Supasoft. They were awesome to work with, and I felt a little homeless, to be honest, at the Fort Worth show because I normally have a booth at shows, and
Yeah.
not having like a home base, I was just kind of wandering around. I'm like, well, this is cool because I get to experience a different side of the show, but I
Hmm.
also don't get to interact in the same way. So I spent some time bumming the booths too with Cotton Heritage and Supasoft, which was super fun. So
It's
I
really
liked it.
cool. Like apparently, Supersoft has some fans here. So Joe says, "Supersoft, my body's all in rips for them. Amazing offerings. I hadn't seen them, but honestly, I got to, it was so nice as to be able to go with Katie look at her samples, and I was like, man, those are really great. I wish I'd have had those earlier. And frankly, though there are some textures there, I kind of felt the same way as the flower sack towels. I'm like, boy, this beats some of the toweling I've done before, and it looked really cool. I'm like, man, I would have certainly sold this product for some of the places that I've done toweling for before. And then we have a couple other great comments here. Carol says, and obviously, embroidery is tactile art. We need to feel all the components. Yeah, there's just a lot to it that needs to be felt and seen. Uh, is directly. I think that's just how it is. It's like color judgment too. It's one of those things that's really hard. I've sent a lot of samples across the country that other people wouldn't send, but there are sometimes things customers have to touch and see in natural light. A couple other great comments too. We do certainly have people agreeing with us about shows. Christine says the DAC shows are a more intimate experience. Yet to make more connections, I think I agree. And then what she said too. Speaking as someone who works at smaller trade shows, vendors in the apparel space tend to write off smaller shows, which is a mistake. More and more people go into the smaller shows because they can get more time and attention to the vendors. I think it's hard because it comes in waves. Every year, I either hear that the trade shows are all coming back and we're never going to be online again, or all the trade shows are gone and we're going online and we're never doing anything else. I think we're seeing people exploring things more. Certainly, we just saw Stalls do a really big vendor specific event that they actually did kind of VIPs only. It seems like they kind of brought people in and did that, but they want to do more smaller regional things. So we're seeing everything from kind of mobile open houses to more people doing retreats. I mean, some people have been doing retreats and stuff forever. Like Lisa's been doing them for quite some time. She's very experienced, but I'm seeing more of that happening. And people hiring educators. I know, Katie, you've offered that before. I don't know how many times you've been taken up on that, but I know that's something you've offered before where if people wanted to put a group together and hire you out, there are more educators willing to do that too. It's just more experiences are available now. And I think we're trying to see what experience makes the most sense for these different groups that are out there now.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. I've done, I mean, most of the trainings on site that I do are very like one business, maybe two coming together to bring me in. But the nice thing about that is it lets them train in their environment with their equipment in their space that
Yeah.
they're normally working, their hoops, their everything. And it allows me to see too, like if they're, even if it's not the same machine I run, you kind of get
Mm-hmm.
a ear for that doesn't sound quite right, or we're having registration issues on this head. Oh, it turns out there's something loose. Let's fix
Yeah.
that. And I'm not a technician, but I'm mechanically minded enough to where it's like, okay, if it's not this, this, and this, what else could it possibly be? Well, if they come to me, I can't do that kind of
Yeah.
diagnostics. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. But no, I think like the Applique Getaway show doing that,
Mhm.
uh, being there, it's a different crowd. It's super energetic and exciting. And I would love to do a retreat at some point because I feel like it would probably be that kind of energy. And I just
Oh, for
love
sure.
that when you have a room full of people that are just on fire for embroidery. It's really fun.
Yeah, I think that's something that for those of us who do the creative side of this thing, what at all, if you're someone like me who is really dyed in the wool commercial, until you get to a space where there are some more crafters and prosumers, this doesn't mean that they aren't businesses. Because that's the other thing too.
Right.
There are people who are commercial, but who come from it from where we would say is an amateur space. And remember, the root word of that is to love the thing that you're doing. People who really love embroidery and then do business, they really are on fire, and that energy is something that you shouldn't turn down so quickly. Not to mention they have skin in the game in a way that someone who is just about the numbers and the needles moving may not.
Right.
I've had times where someone comes to one of my super commercial classes and just says flat immediately. They're like, I need to make this thing make sense, or I need to tell my boss why this will make money, and there's no interest in the craft.
Right.
That has happened rarely. If they're going to classes most of the time, that's not it, unless they're being sent by an employer to prove that they went to classes when they're
Right.
on a trip
Right.
somewhere. Other
Mhm.
than that, most of the time it's not that. But there is rarely a crowd like you'll see from people who are lovers of embroidery who are then doing business or who are just there to scratch their creative itch.
Yep.
I'll say we've got a couple more comments that are worthwhile. Joe's bringing a couple in here that are great. There's a major deficit for decorators to have an opportunity to see the warnings for decorating techniques. So he's saying like Sandmar has started, but you still don't have the info on results with heavy embroidery. Yeah, that's a tough one with embroidery. And I don't know if you feel the same way, Katie. I don't think that people are cognizant of how much we're altering a garment by embroidering it. They think of
Right.
it like print, like it's laying on top,
Yeah.
and it's very hard to get that through. It takes time to kind of get people to really feel that one.
I would really like to. I mean, obviously, it would be like a full time job for 8 years and then some, but I would love to create a recipe book for embroiderers for these different fabrics that, your stretch factor, your thickness, your
Yeah,
textures.
yeah,
Here's how your baseline approach. It might not be the right approach, but it's at least close enough to get you a decent ish result and know what not to sell with it. Because I think one of the things my brain does is just sponge everything in and it recalls pretty well. I mean, it's getting there to where I have to write things down more, but a lot of people really struggle with it's not a cookie cutter business. So
no,
when you
no,
have employees that are like, well, just tell me what backing and tell me what hoop, like, okay, you might have to try a couple different backings with this particular design or make some adjustments to the design to get it
yep,
to sew out perfectly on each fabric. So it would be
yep.
really nice, and that's where, like with my online training sessions, we have a monthly question answer session for
Mm,
that kind of stuff because I'll have people send me a logo. I always say, email me the logo, email me with the photos, tell me about the fabric, tell me everything you can about it so that we can figure that out because it is not cookie cutter.
and I'm just going to bring this up. We are going to ask this again later, but if you want to see more of that and get to that education that Katie's doing with Trouble Me Not, it's actually at threadknowledge.com, which is an awesome website name, by the way. So go check that out. We're going to say it again, but I like to put it up there more than once if you want to get to be involved with the education that Katie's doing. So well worth it, by the way. If you don't know, you should know now. If you trust me, you should trust Katie. Anyway, if you're here already, I'm hoping you trust me. Well, then trust her too. Trust me, because we've talked a lot. It is questionable whether or not we sometimes lost voices because we were just talking too dang
Right. Was it the teaching or was it the visiting?
there,
Yes.
there there may be some truth to that. I'm not
Yeah.
going to say, but we do have a couple other things. By the way, Joe says you're in with his crowd too. He's like, come join us, Nerds Unite, hang out with the rest of us at the Impression shows. We were hanging out. Where were you, man?
Yeah.
We were hanging out just fine. I
We
don't know where
had
you
the
were.
best waiter in Long Beach, I think.
Yeah, no, for real.
What
That
was
that guy
that?
was
I don't even
awesome. Oh
remember what that
God,
was.
tequila something, and that don't guys don't. We were not entirely just because the place was called like Tequila Jacks or
Right, no.
something did not mean we were entirely on
I
the floor.
overdid
That did
Dr.
not happen.
Pepper.
Yeah, no, I drank enough soda to kill a man, but didn't drink enough tequila to do it.
Right. No,
Trust me, we were being pretty decent. We had teaching in the morning. Come on.
yeah.
But at the same time, we certainly did hang out there like way too much.
Yeah,
Talking
I'm
talking
surprised
shop.
they're in charge of rent, but you get talk and shop, it is, yeah, that's kind of what happens.
And as Lisa says about these groups too, same thing. The energy of a focus group is contagious. Well, for us, also the energy of someone else who's in this space and who is passionate about what we're doing is pretty contagious too. But the other thing about that is, I think if you guys are coming as you know people who want to be with educators, find a group of educators who is doing this stuff off the clock, who loves it this much, and that show that they are at is going to be a good show because not only are you going to see it in the class, find where they are later. Believe me, they'll probably accept you right in and you're going to hear a lot. I mean,
Right.
certainly don't follow us to our rooms. A
Yeah,
couple
that'd be
times I've had to stop with that one. And especially those of persuasion don't love that. I mean, I don't love it either. But certainly I don't have as much risk. At least I think I'm certainly different risks in mind. But yeah, having someone follow your room, not great. Having someone ask a question after hours, just fine. So anyway, I will go ahead and say no more about that. But we've all had fun experience at the shows. We love you. Not up to the floor where we're sleeping, please. Thank
right.
you. Small boundaries. That's all I'm asking. But yeah, we have all these people who are kind of chiming in on the same stuff. Doug has the same problem we've had. Uh, all the time, people want to do heavy, large designs on T-shirts. I'd say for me, the corporate world is bad about this because they have a logo that they must adhere to, and so
Right.
they don't really have a lot of leeway to let you play with it. I've gotten away with murder because they start to trust you once you show them the difference, but you have to prove it. It
Right.
is a prove it kind of experience where I think in creative spaces, and you can certainly correct me, when I've done creative stuff or stuff with stock, there's more time where they say, oh, I want an eagle. And it's not this eagle, this Pantone color.
Right.
It's I can find them something stylistically that's more functional that doesn't necessarily have to be exact.
And I think that's, one of the things that I talk about, like with the multimedia, a lot of people think that is just for your creative side of the business. But one of the things to consider, like I
Mm-hmm.
had a logo that was it's for a school mascot. So it's got a lot of colors, it would be heavy fill, heavy everything. And instead of doing that all as a traditional embroidered design, I sublimated a patch and then sewed that on. And it looked great. The
Yep.
stitch count was lower, the price reflected that, and ultimately they were just happy. So there's different ways to go about things.
It's hard not to be precious about embroidery if that's the thing you love the most. But I can't tell you the number of times I've solved a problem with sublimation, just like you said.
Mhm. Yep.
Especially working, you guys know I did TV and kind of TV and movies for a while. Sometimes you just can't digitize, run, and send out. And this is a real job. Karate patches for several different locations on each one of the uniforms for 8 schools in a day. But
Right.
you can sublimate all those and put edges on them.
Yep.
It's about knowing what's really going to work for that customer. And sometimes it's not embroidery as much as it hurts, right?
Right.
Or the other one I found out, and I don't know if you've had to deal with these, those tight biking caps, like the hats that are very, very light. They have almost no body to them. They wanted to throw them in with the rest of their structured hats and just have them embroidered. No way on earth could I keep that thing from bunching up.
I touched it once.
Nope.
I didn't like it. It was
Nope.
really unpleasant.
Yeah, they're weird fabric, and you better believe I was very happy to hand that off to the heat press folks. And
Right.
I'm like,
There you
I will
go.
cut, I'll cut all your stuff. I will hand you all this if you just
Right.
take this out of my embroidery department, please. And as Lisa said, which I love, she's being the voice of the newbie today. What? Not every design can be stitched on any fabric? Yeah. Yeah. No.
Well, not
No.
well. You can try it.
Oh no, you can put any fabric under there. It'll chew it right up. You can put your hand under there too. If you had
Yeah.
an older machine with no sensors, it'll go through that too, but it's not a great idea.
Right.
And we have
Just
a couple.
because you can does not mean you should.
listen to the master. Trust me, this is this is what it is. Though I agree, Barb says she keeps an embroidery journal. The recipe
Mhm.
journal is a great thing to start on. What sucks is sometimes it still doesn't play out. You never know with the particular garment. But
Right.
yeah, and Gina says through COVID, we saw a difference in the quality of garments and materials. Yep. We had to cope with a lot of stuff then. I think it's getting better. Lisa, again, being our newbie, just add another layer of
Oh my gosh.
stabilizer.
Go for 5. Do 5.
I always try not to tell the real stories, but there is. I had somebody come like, "Oh well, I put I put 2 layers of action mesh and then a layer of cutaway underneath it for stability, and then to make it look crisp, I put a layer of tearaway under that, and then I put Solvay on top." And you're like, "Okay, you've built corrugated cardboard underneath your garment." I'm
Right.
like, "You can do that. Believe me, that's not moving. You're correct. That is not going to stretch. Not anymore." Not even
No.
when they put it on.
Oh,
It's not going to stretch at
that's what we
all.
call bulletproof for so many reasons.
Absolutely. If you can stab your trimmers into it and not get your hand,
Yeah.
that's too rough for people to wear. Don't do that. Tracy says sometimes vinyl is much better, but some people just don't want to believe it until they see it embroidered out. Yeah, no. Keep your bad samples
Yep.
and show them sometimes. And I know it's hard because we're very proud and we don't want to show things that don't turn out. But sometimes, especially when it's something that you can say, here's the same design on 2 materials, one looking great, one looking awful. It's the material, not the design. There are times where that is a good lesson for people to
I
learn.
call that customer education. And generally
Yes.
speaking, I would say I haven't met one yet where when you educate them that way, they trust you more, they're more loyal because they recognize like you know what not to do.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
want their logo to look the best it can. And when you protect that, they appreciate it.
And that's ultimately just having a machine. That's the barrier to entry. That's the base. And it's getting smaller and smaller. That wall is easier to jump every year. The machines are more capable and cheaper over and over again, or at least some version of them is. So that's not enough to make you important. Being a person who provides real solutions, that is way better. Embroiderer is one thing. The person who solves my problems is another. And
Right.
we should all strive to be that person. Though I do. Here's Lisa again, just giving us the humor today. Kevlar embroidery. Yeah, no, no. I mean, I've done some very interesting materials with fire resistant, but none of them would I trust with a bullet. No,
No,
not for real, guys. We say bulletproof. I don't mean
not really.
these are not
Just
plates. Be
kidding.
good, be good. And last but not least, we've got everybody saying lovely stuff. So I'm sorry if I missed some folks as we go. We have some good stuff here. Lisa says customer education is customer retention, and I agree with that
Mhm. Yep.
entirely. All right, so as we're getting kind of toward, we've got an hour. We'll do maybe a little extra. I have a couple more things I wanted to ask you before we got done. Um, Instead of going too out there, I think we'll not go way into predictions and stuff like that. But um, to your eye, as you were talking to these folks in the couple shows you've been to, did you see kind of a direction people were headed, or did you feel like it's very varied, or is there something new about the way we're moving as embroiderers kind of in the world?
I think, in general, we're always going to hold that traditional embroidery space. But
Yeah.
I do think that there's some excitement on some of the different techniques that are popping up, like the embossed, where instead of
Mm-hmm.
putting your thread on top of the puff, your puff is under the fabric. And then it's trapped between your backing and your fabric. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a trendy thing that's really coming about. I'm working on a method to make it a little bit more production friendly, I would
Cool.
say.
Cool.
So I'm working on some things with that, but ultimately, I think that's a really cool technique that sets it's something new and different, and your stitch
Mhm.
count is really low. If we can get around because typically how that's done is you're going to hoop your backing, and then basically you're appliquing, but underneath of your garment. So your garment goes on after the foam is now
Mhm.
on the backing, which that's fine and dandy, but you have to remove the hoop and then get your shirt on there, position it to where you think it should be. It's kind of clunky in my opinion. So I'm
Mhm.
working on a different version of that will be on top of the shirt covered by another like fabric
Okay.
print broadcloth or something like that, felt
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
still the same concept of, fast to produce. It gives you that raised effect because I think that looks really cool. And
Mhm.
I think for people that have tried puff and have not been successful, don't like the tedious side of it, don't want to burn their
Yeah.
garments, things like that. I think it's a different technique that they might be a little more comfortable with. to take their business in a different direction without being, a whole new skill set, whole new machine settings, and all that kind of stuff. Um, the multimedia stuff is definitely exciting. This
Hmm.
is an area that I've been dabbling in for the better part of a decade. As soon as I figured out I could take glitter heat transfer vinyl and stitch it
Yeah.
up as applique, I was like, oh my gosh, this is fun. Like,
Yep.
I'm not a real girly girl, but give me some glitter with my embroidery. I'm super stoked.
On that one, what I loved is I did the white stuff. We'll take sublimation. So I did full color sublimation on the glitter vinyl, and then did the applique version
I'm
of
gonna
it.
have to do that. I'm gonna
Oh,
save
it's
that.
so cool. I'll show you samples someday if you ever haven't seen any of the ones I did.
Well,
But
I
it's
might
been
have
some
to do that
time.
next week because I'm
Oh,
getting
they're so
ready for a
cool.
multimedia class at Atlantic City.
Oh,
So I think this is going to come to life. I'll give
yeah.
you credit.
Hit me up. I'll send you pictures.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, that's the multimedia stuff. It's like in Brilliance too. It's something where the funny thing is it's been around a long time. I know
Mhm.
talking with Brian Bailey, creative in Brilliance, and you guys know we work on all kinds of cool software stuff. In the back end of Brilliance, still sitting there in the tools that people don't really touch, it has the ability to crop and make easily cropped prints inside of appliques ready to export. And it's in the software right now, and it's not being highly utilized. So you can
Right.
have less usage and a really controlled bleed. And I was like, you have that as a tool that's already built into, and this is me who should know better. But I was like, man, with all these people doing prints and direct to film, and I think there's some time for that to come back. And I know we were both at Impressions Expo, and we saw like in the rock booth they had ZSK machines where they were doing projection alignment onto
Mhm.
prints. So I think
Which is really
we
cool.
may, I
It's
mean, this has happened, and you've been doing it for years. It's happened over and over again. Print with
right.
embroidery on it is not new. We've all done
No.
several iterations of this thing over the years, from
Mhm.
screen print to embroidery to transfers. But I feel like we might be poised with all of this print on demand and film and stuff to
I
see another rise of the
I think
multimedia with
one of the
embroidery.
things about it is, one of the first ones that I did was it's a basketball design with everything printed
Mm-hmm.
except for the net. And
Mm,
I designed that so that it didn't need, I mean, I have a laser alignment, I can do that, but production wise, I wanted it to be fast. So it's
that's
like,
awesome.
well, it literally has an inch margin. It can go any which way and it's going to look great. So I think what those new
It's
tools are going
cool.
to do is take it where people aren't limited, because now you can get more precise placement. Well, that's great
Sure.
because I don't have to design it. There's a little bit more freedom,
Yeah.
to not have to like leave room for error, so to speak.
Though, as you say, the great thing is for those of us who, and especially we've talked about the kind of third bedroom producers or smaller producers who've got maybe a couple of machines, you don't necessarily have to buy into projection. Those of us who have done multimedia over the years, you can leave a little slop. You
Yep.
can add registration marks to your print. And especially,
Mhm.
funny enough, you as a like single head fleet or couple of single head shop are well more ready to produce that stuff because you're used to hooping individual garments and
Mhm.
adjusting, and you know how to get higher margins out of those
I
smaller
was just gonna
runs.
say, when you charge for it, because that's the thing is
Yeah.
people are willing to pay, and my local customers buy different things than my online customers.
Yeah.
Ask for what you need to get paid and then find your market. And
Yeah.
the two might cross over, they might not. So, and that's okay.
That's awesome. God, what a good thing. As we're kind of winding down, what a fantastic way to kind of get that there. I'm glad that you say that. It's like, I always love hearing something where I'm like, I know I've said it and I know I've gotten on this soapbox, but here's someone in Katie that has done this stuff in a different market that I'm talking about and is still has that same experience. And I think there are things that cross over. And part of it is that number one, we are not our audience. You yourself are not your own audience. Number two, audiences change what they're going to buy and what's important to them. And number three, sometimes it's about just finding that audience, and you can't always just discount your way into serving everybody.
No, if they come to you for price, they're going to leave you for price.
It's yeah, bargain shoppers are fickle.
Mhm.
Absolutely, bargain shoppers are fickle. So last but not least, before and also I want you to plug your work at the end of this, but if you had a choice of like what you would like to see people investing themselves in as embroiderers, what would you want to see more of them interested in as the shows go on this year?
That's a
Doozy, right?
question. So where do I want to see them as far as what they're what they're advancing their businesses in, or
Any way you want to take this, like what would you like to see people pay more attention to? How about that?
opportunity? I think
Mm,
opportunity, both in their, like I entered the world thinking I was going to do left chest logos all the time.
yeah,
And if I would have stuck on that path, yes, I would make good money. I would still have my machines, I'd have them running.
sure.
But ultimately, that flexibility and being open to different paths, I think, is important. Especially when you'd go to the shows, you see these new things out there, be open minded about them, and then recognize too the return on investment. I think because one of the
Mm,
issues a mistake I made, if I could say a mistake, was when I started dabbling with the idea of getting into embroidery. I was like, well, I've struggled. I've eaten a lot of mashed potatoes. I really I'm liking life where I can pay things,
yeah.
so I didn't want to backslide. And so what I did is I saved 50% of the money I needed for the machine. Took me 2 years to do that. I
Hmm.
overthought it. I'm like, is this really something I should be doing? All the while, the area in my store was piled with recycling in the spot where my machines now live. So that part
Mm,
of my store is making me no money.
yeah.
And ultimately, I lined up a bunch of work before I ordered my first machine to make sure I can hit the ground running with this, which is great. But
Hmm.
once I did that and I pulled the trigger and I got the machine, I'm like, holy cow, I could have eaten better. I could have paid things off
Yeah.
faster
Yeah.
because I was not I delayed that return on investment. I was making
Mm,
the investment before I pulled the trigger.
mm.
So I would say, like, think things through, make calculated choices, but don't overthink and hold yourself back, and be open to those opportunities and paths that open up. There might be a detour that's really worthwhile.
I'm going to add to that as someone who did a bunch of showing as well, and being someone who's on the other side of the booth. I'm going to say if you've got one of your machines you've bought is sitting in mothballs and you haven't touched it because you're scared to run something, right now, today, if you're tuning in because you thought you were somebody who hasn't gotten the gumption to do it now.
Yep.
It just
You won't
there's
know
no
anything more tomorrow that you don't know today about it.
no.
Dive in.
Dive in now, do the thing, because though it's really good to know things, to understand your audience, all that stuff's great. If you, especially though, if you're one of these people, because I'm surprised, especially in the printing side of this thing, I've seen so many people are like, I've got a heat press, it's still in the box.
Uh-huh.
Take it out of the box, rip
Lots
the
of
box
people do
off.
this. Yep. Get that cutter out, get that press out, get that everything out and start using it.
Make something for yourself and don't worry about wasting materials if that's the thing that's scaring you. If it's not going to be good enough, make some self-directed projects first. That's fine. You're gonna need to waste some materials. That's fine.
Yep.
But you're right. There's certainly. I'm shocked that, I mean, you did all this stuff before you invested. I've seen people who have essentially made the monetary investment and still
They
are
don't do
waiting to launch. I'm like, you cannot launch without taking the first step.
it. Yep.
You have to run.
And that, I
It's
think, goes back to those people that come to the room before they buy the machine. They're
yeah, yeah.
they're taking that fear out of it before they make that investment, which I think is huge.
And I gotta say, if you are lucky enough to be somewhere where Katie is teaching it on like a hands-on thing, I do a lot of lecture classes. You're not going to get your hands-on material in my classes. The sad truth is, unless I pass it around to you and it's already embroidered, you're not going to touch a lot of embroidery in my class. Whereas if you've got people like Katie has done, and I know she's been doing this for a long time, who's actually doing workshops where there are real machines in the room, go do that. And if that's the thing that takes the edge off the decision for you, absolutely go do that and talk to people who have done that work. Talking's great. Get out and see some machines and go to physical shows so you can get around the equipment and certainly around people like 80 who are teaching hands-on essential basics, because that's going to make a big
I
difference too.
really, really want to. So the Atlantic City hands-on class does everything except for actual sew out. So we don't have a
Wow.
machine, but
Wow.
we get hands-on with some of the junk that didn't turn out right to troubleshoot what went wrong, work on hooping skills and things like that. Like you said, get hands-on with fabrics, and then what if the customer wanted this logo on it? How would you approach it? Kind of type of thing. It's a roundtable setting where we do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
what I really want to do is, I think that retreat side of it would be really exciting to go in, have people come in and work with a machine and do some of the techniques. Even applique is scary
Oh,
to a
yeah.
lot of people.
Of
Um,
course.
it's very basic, but you don't know what supplies you're going to need. You don't know, did I trim it close enough or didn't I, or when I cut the file, how do I do that? So I think that retreat side of it, like I would love to expand that and make those opportunities available, because there are so many people with equipment and fear mixed together. So
Equip- I think that might be the that's the scent of the embroidery warehouse's equipment fear. That's kind of
yeah,
a lot of where we start in this game. But
yep,
if you want to see more, first guys, I will say go to impressionsexpo.com. Atlantic City's coming up March 20th through 22nd. So there are opportunities there. Also, remember that the workshop day before that is on the 19th, because they start the day before the actual show opens to do workshops. So impressionsexpo.com is where you go to see that. And once again, and hopefully where we can see more of your stuff, Katie, and let us know where else, yeah, pardon me, beyond
yeah.
that.
We're going to be, so
Redknowledge.com is
I'm excited to see how this goes. Dax is going to introduce a new
oh,
location this year in Nashville. So that'll be not a ton of class opportunities. The Basically your best of the pick is what you get at that location. So it's a really nice, if you're in the area or you want to go to that show. The embroidery basics class is going to be at that one, which I think is, no matter if you're beginner or kind of dabbling or in it, but you're struggling and you still have that more fear than passion, like jump in on that class. And then of course the Minnesota and the Illinois show with Dax too. The Illinois one has the full lineup of classes and is in May
mm,
as well. So if you're really wanting to dive in, of course you get screen print, all of, it's not just embroidery. So those of you who are running stores that have all those different areas that you're servicing, it's a really nice show to take the whole crew to and send everybody to classes and wander the floor, get those really personable experiences.
I'm going to add this really quickly and just kind of show you guys. This is the DAX website. You'll see stuff coming up. Actually, you cannot with the comments up. You're not going to actually see any of these dates probably very well. I'm going to bring this up just so you can see them. Nashville's coming up May 9th through 10th. Chicagoland DAX is coming up the 30th and 31st of May. And Twin Cities DAX is August 1st and 2nd. So just to kind of make that clear, that's what we're talking about with the DAX shows. Head on over to daxshow.com and you'll be able to check out more details and find out when the individual classes are. So important there too. And then as always, threadknowledge.com, and I can bring that up as well. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can do that too. That is Katie's site for Trouble Me Not Embroidery. If you want to see directly what she's got on offer as well, by all means, check that out. So let's go ahead and I will share that too. Why not? It's worthwhile to do. But let me grab, actually, my screen share locked up. Sorry, guys. I'll tell you. I
Go.
love it's always live stuff's always fun, right? Every time you're doing something live, you're bound to have a problem. Here we
Right.
go. So let's bring that down. Now I'll go ahead and take the comments off. We'll bring it up. So there we are. That is if to know you are at the right site. So threadknowledge.com, and you'll find all of the other sorts of opportunities for education, in-person education, online training, offers, resources, and all this awesome stuff, as well as the DAX show listings for Katie. So by all means, check that out, guys, and worthwhile to do so. I would like to just once again say, as with all the people I bring on, I'm very unlikely on this show to bring on somebody who I've got mixed feelings about their level of education or what they're willing to offer you guys. So by all means, I endorse you guys going out and seeing Katie's work. So if that's important to you, if that matters that I care, then by all means, take this as my social proof that you should go out and check out her shows.
It is. That's a high compliment. I mean,
Thank you.
you've got far more experience in this industry than I do. So, like I said, one of my favorite comments I ever got was an attendee that came to one of my classes that, I surveyed the room. How many of you have been doing this for 5 years?
Yeah.
And I got to 30, and this lady had been doing embroidery for, I mean, literally I didn't ask her to actually reveal how long she'd been doing embroidery, but it was
Yeah.
longer than I've been alive. And I'm like, whew, I don't know if I can teach her anything. But she came up to me after the class and said it was a great class. It was really enjoyable. She learned some things, and I was like, that is a very high compliment. So it was really cool to have that happen.
No, I mean, and well earned, like I said. And I think the other thing is just because so many people aren't out there sharing. What I'll say for this now, number one, I don't doubt you have tons of experience, an experience that I don't have in different areas of the embroidery world. But the thing is, there is something for everybody to teach everybody else here. I can teach something to a fully home based crowd. I've done it and had people be surprised by something that I thought was just knowledge as a commercial person. And the other way around, I have been in a you guys know that I sometimes, in the way I shouldn't do, go, ooh, project classes. Like, I don't want to go and I'm going to learn to make one specific thing. And I'm not about doing those, though I need to get better at it. But I've gone to 100% walk me through something project class and learn something. We all have something to teach at every stage we're at. I think it's worthwhile for us to all kind of know that too. For those of you who are debating on it, even if you're just sharing in a group with other people, super worthwhile to do
Oh,
that and to
absolutely.
teach what you know.
Yep.
You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what other people don't know.
Right.
So we all have something to gain from this. But by all means, having been around the stuff you do, Katie knows some stuff you should know. But yeah, everybody, thank you for being around this and being with us. And certainly, Katie, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's been awesome. Thank you
Awesome.
for
So
having me.
we will do this again sometime, hopefully. But if nothing else, again, hopefully some more opportunities to teach together down the road.
I would love that.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being here. All right, folks. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of wrap this up and let Katie have the rest of her day back. I've taken enough of her time as well, but love to see everybody here. And I'm going to go ahead and echo some stuff here too. Christine says, definitely encourage more women to teach, need more female speakers and educators. Yes, absolutely. And those of you who select educators, please select more educators who have not been around. It doesn't just always have to be graybeards like me. Bring in some different people, and I encourage that. Everybody kind of, I've had somebody say that because like, about 2 years ago at Impressions, I taught like 6 sessions, and I mean, I was teaching everything. I think half of it because we were coming out of the pandemic, and a lot of people weren't traveling, and I had decided to start traveling early. I think I'm paying my price for a little of that sometimes lately, but at the same time, everybody's like, "Oh, are you worried now that you're only teaching a couple classes?" I'm like, no. Number one, teaching is something we do for the love of it. It doesn't always pay us a whole lot. Number two, um, if you're threatened by the idea that the thing you love in the world is going to go on beyond you, you got your head screwed on loose. It really needs to be where we all have a voice in this thing. And honestly, if people coming after me don't do better than I didn't do very well as a teacher. So I'm certainly hoping there's some other people out there. And what I love, everybody's found all those pages that they're there. Love that. We do have a couple other little comments that I love, like Barb saying, if you're practicing, thrift shops are great places to find different garments to practice on. Absolutely. If you cannot find them anywhere else, I know I've done that, especially when you are faced with really expensive materials or things you don't know very well. Did a lot of experiments on secondhand leather back in the day because of that, because leather garments are hard to come by and expensive. And one other cool thing is we were talking about, Barb was talking about her journal, and I think this is a cool idea that she had. I should elaborate in my journal. I even staple a piece of the fabric when needed. Fantastic. Yeah, a physical journal. I mean, it's going to look like Dr. Jones's Grail diary by the time you're done with it, with all the arcane notes and chunks of stuff stapled into it. But that's the thing. I think that there's nothing wrong with that, and it's really valuable to have something physical. I write on the back of samples all the time. You'll find on the back of the stabilizer on a sample, I will write notes about what's going on that piece and write directly on my samples. Yes, it's weird, but sometimes it's just that information needs to be there when you need it. Eventually, you'll develop a sense of things, but it's fantastic to have that physical representation, especially when you go teach somebody else too. And very glad you guys were here. So thank you for being here. Glad to have gotten back to the thread break and couldn't have had a better guest than Katie to do that with. So for the rest of you guys, learn from some of the stuff she said today, especially opportunity. Go out there and grab that opportunity as it comes to you. Don't hesitate too much. Hey, do your homework, know what you're doing, but get after it. You've got more in you than you think. That was a fantastic way to get back into this, and I can't wait to see you guys again with a regularly scheduled take up next week.